What's up, guys? I'm EJ, and this is Kendall here, and today we're doing a predictions video for some of the top prospects in high school going into college. Kind of, we've done this before. I think one of the interesting aspects of this video and of this kind of conversation is the threat of Europe and Australia also playing a factor potentially maybe with some of these guys as well.
Yeah.
Today we got a lot of undecideds. We got Jalen Green, Ziaire Williams, Josh Christopher, Greg Brown, and we threw in Jonathan Kuminga as well, who we understand is obviously a class of 2021 guy, but potentially could be a reclassified candidate as well. So, what do you think of this whole conversation we're having?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You mentioned obviously the overseas option. As of right now, all these guys claim they're going to college. Jalen Green seems to be the one that's the most likely potentially to go overseas, but he's also the most adamant that he's going to be playing in college because he knows that conversation's out there. So it's certainly a factor in all these recruitments. But as of right now, I'm going to assume all these guys will be playing college basketball next season.
Okay, so let's start. Let's go right there with Jalen Green, Fresno, California. Very, very athletic kid. Definitely a lot of talent. We talked about him on this YouTube channel before. Right now, he's ESPN's #1 player. 24/7 Sports has him number 3, and Rivals has him number 2. So a consensus top 3 guy. Current choices: Auburn, Memphis, Oregon, SC, and Fresno State, his hometown college. Where do you think you'll be seeing him play next year?
This is tough. Obviously, look, if you saw the video last year, you guys know I'm a Memphis fan. So obviously this is one is close to home. I think a lot of it's going to come down to what happens with Mike Miller this offseason, which is interesting because Mike Miller, obviously, is an assistant at Memphis. It's growing a very close relationship with him and someone else on our list that we'll talk about later. But we don't know if Mike Miller is going to be back next year. You know, obviously, this is not the season that Memphis has not gone the way they expected. With the whole James Wiseman situation, there's been a little bit of friction. So you wonder, look, if Mike Miller is a coach somewhere else in terms of if he's coaching the NBA, if he's coaching another team gets a head coaching job, then I think Jalen Green is going to be an Auburn Tiger. I think, Sharif Cooper, who's already committed there, one of the best point guards in the country, him and Jalen Green have a close relationship. And Green has made it clear that he wants to play. He doesn't want to play on the West Coast. Even though he has teams like USC and Fresno and Oregon on his list, it seems as if he's very comfortable, either him or his family is very comfortable with him playing on the East Coast, which is why Memphis.
Why do you think that is? And obviously, Memphis and Auburn aren't on the East Coast.
Not on the East Coast,
but they're in the middle of America, further east, obviously, than where he's
right. Sometimes there's a thing of in recruiting, whether it be football or basketball. Sometimes guys need to get away from home. For whatever reason, whether it's when you go to, especially in basketball, when you're going one and done, it's like a home away from home experience anyway. It's better to get that now than to spend a year in Fresno or spend a year at USC and then shell shock when you get to the NBA and you're playing in you're playing Miami,
for the Grizzlies,
you're playing in Atlanta,
Miami,
right, exactly. So that could be part of it, but if Mike Miller stays at Memphis, I think he ends up at Memphis despite the rough season. But if he does not, I think he ends up at Auburn.
It seems like Auburn's got a lot of momentum right now.
A lot of momentum.
I mean, Bruce Pearl's done a hell of a job. I know, obviously, you being a Memphis fan would love to see him there. I know for Penny, it would definitely help probably stabilize. With a lot of uncertainty in terms of how his tenure is going.
They have no commitments, which is it's a red flag.
Yeah, so I think that he badly wants Green, but if I was hedging my bets, I would also lean Auburn as well.
The other thing to look at with both schools, we have the FBI situation at Auburn, but then we also have an NCAA investigation potentially with Memphis and the Wiseman situation and them playing him and being an eligible player. So the whole scandal thing may not impact either one negatively because they both are dealing with it.
What about Ziaire Williams? Obviously, Sierra Canyon, biggest high school right now in terms of the hype that they have. He's been probably their best player. ESPN has him at number 7, 24/7 has him at 5, and Rivals has him at 6. Choices right now: North Carolina, USC, Arizona, Oregon, UCLA, Stanford. Where do you think you see him going?
Yeah, Ziaire Williams is a tough one because, again, he's a guy, a West Coast kid that is certainly, as you can tell by his list, almost certainly going to stay on the West Coast. His list of schools are all Pac-12, including, besides North Carolina. So he's a tough one, but I'm gonna go with Arizona. I think Arizona, assuming they can skate all of the FBI stuff which they have so far. You talk about They've had a decent season with Nico Mannion and Josh Green, but those guys, their draft stock has been fairly fine. You know, they both can be first round picks, maybe not top 10 picks. You know, we'll see where Mannion goes, but you know, I think Arizona tends to have the success with the guys on the West Coast. However they do it, you can make all the jokes you want about what they're doing to get those guys. But, you know, obviously you watch out for Stanford because he's a very smart kid if you listen to him talk. And Stanford, they always tend to do well with those kinds of guys, especially in football, but, you know, basketball as well.
I think Stanford's had a really strong season.
Yeah, they've had a strong season, have some momentum. Gerard Haas is doing a good job. And then you think about USC as well, obviously being a Southern California kid. That's always an appeal, but it doesn't seem like this is a UCLA situation with him, despite as well as UCLA's played.
So right now you're leaning Arizona, but
Arizona.
Stanford and SC is something to watch as well. Makes sense. Okay, another LA kid, Josh Christopher. Great athlete, slashing type player. ESPN has him 10, 24/7 has him 10, Rivals has him at 11. Right now, his choices: Arizona State, UCLA, Michigan, and Missouri. What about him?
Yeah, he might be one of the tougher ones to peg because, again, California kid, very, very California. Like there's California like Jalen Green, who like doesn't really care where he played, and there's Josh Christopher, who is your traditional Southern California, eats, sleeps, breathes LA basketball, your James Harden type. I think that could play a factor. Look, UCLA was the favorite for a long time, but they've kind of, even despite the great play that they had,
they turned their season around.
Yeah, despite the great play, you know, they've kind of, you know, faded a little bit in his recruitment, and we've seen Michigan, you know, a team really come out of nowhere, and now is viewed by a lot of people as the favorite, and Michigan can't be ignored with what Juwan Howard has done and the thing that he's building over there in Ann Arbor. I'm going to go with last year I had the bold prediction of Anthony Edwards going to Georgia, and I ended up being right on that one, even though most people thought he was going to Florida State. I'm going to go away from the buck the trend a little bit with the Josh Christopher to Michigan stuff. I'm going to say he's going to Arizona State. I mentioned him being a Southern California kid. I don't know if he's going to want to go all the way to Ann Arbor, Michigan. I think when you talk about James Harden being an Arizona State guy, him being a Southern California kid, I imagine he'll be in his ear on some level. Bobby Hurley's done a great job, obviously, at Arizona State.
And he's been really strong on the recruiting trail since he's been hired.
Very strong on the recruiting trail, and the X factor is Josh Christopher's brother transferred to Arizona State.
Right.
So typically when that happens, no matter what you hear, remember we were hearing Cade Cunningham's going to Kentucky, but at the end of the day, his brother was the coach.
Right.
You know, at Oklahoma State. I think those things tend to weigh out. So I'm going to go with a little bit of a surprise. I'm going to Arizona State.
Well, Greg Brown, really athletic big man from Texas. Just a machine in terms of the way he can just throw it down. What do you think of him? Michigan, Auburn, Texas, Memphis, UK. ESPN, or his choices, ESPN and 24/7 has him at 9, Rivals at 8.
Greg Brown is an interesting one because for the longest time, Texas was the definitive favorite.
Right.
You know, his parents went to Texas. Like, it's like a third, fourth generation thing with him from Austin.
Yeah, exactly.
So it made sense why he would likely go to Texas, but Shaka Smart is on such thin ice. And just not much momentum in the program. Even if Shaka Smart were to somehow save his job, you wonder, does he want to go to a team that has a coach on a lame duck situation?
He may view himself as a one and done anyway, so he
may not matter.
It might not matter what happens after 1 year.
It may not matter, which is why I think Texas is still in the mix. I'm gonna go back to the Mike Miller thing though. I think if Mike Miller is at Memphis, I think they land Greg Brown. I think Greg Brown, even more so than Jalen Green, I think it's really close with Mike Miller, and I think that I could see a scenario where Memphis gets Greg Brown and they don't get Jalen Green, which would not have said months ago, but that's the way Auburn's really crept up on them. But if Mike Miller is somewhere else, which is also very, very possible right now with the way Memphis is looking, I'm gonna go with UK. I think he ends up at Kentucky, and that's a little bit of a surprise because they have such a loaded front court.
But if you had to choose one in terms of how you think the situation is going to play out between Memphis and Kentucky, I know you said Mike Miller is a big factor.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough.
I mean, you're a Memphis guy. I mean, do you think Mike Miller is going to be around?
Do I think Mike Miller is going to be around? That's tough.
Right now, it's kind of hedging bets. Say if he's there, Memphis is not. It's like, I mean, you gotta give me one.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I think when you talk about Kentucky, my guess is I'm gonna say Memphis in general because I have no reason to believe Mike Miller is just gonna leave.
Okay,
but it's possible. But I look at Kentucky and I'm like, well, yes, they have a loaded front court. With a lot of guys committed. Obviously, you look at Isaiah Jackson and Karen Fletcher and a lot of these guys, Lance Ware, Greg Brown is the best of all of them, by far. So would John Calipari really? I think it's more likely that Greg Brown would commit, and then one of those guys decommits or gets released out of their letter of intent if they don't want to play in that type of situation. But they're not going to deny Greg Brown. So I think that's where he would end up in that scenario.
All right, last guy we have here, Jonathan Kuminga. Number one consensus in the 2021 class, whether you look at ESPN Rivals or 24/7. He has a massive list of 10 teams. Obviously, he's a 2021 guy, so he's,
earlier in his recruitment. Yeah.
Right, so it's early in his recruitment, though. There could be, again, a classification situation with him potentially. Right now, among those 10 teams, Auburn, Duke, FSU, Georgia, UK, Texas Tech, which he has a very close connection with, obviously.
Yes, his brother is at Texas Tech.
Yeah, so those are among the teams. There may be some others in there. Apologies to those fan bases who didn't hear their name, but I wasn't gonna run through all of them. What do you think right now with Kuminga?
Yeah,
well, number one, do you think he reclassifies?
Yeah, I think typically when the conversation is had, I don't remember last time we've heard a kid where it was like, and it's happened, but it's rare when a kid's like, I can reclassify and then be in the NBA the year after, and they don't. Because why wouldn't you start the clock as soon as possible? Kuminga's good enough to do it. I don't see why he wouldn't. Now, will he do it? I think he will do it in the summer. Similar to R.J. Hampton, I think he could play through the Nike EYBL season and then decide to reclassify. He has a weird recruitment because, again, it's very early. He's very quiet. He's not. Some of these guys love to talk to the media about where love to go on visits and stuff, and he's not one of those guys. But you think about the brother factor. To me, I think this is a Kentucky Texas Tech situation.
I think so too.
I think my handle of it. I know you don't like me to hedge bets. I think if he reclassifies,
oh my god, another hedging bet situation.
If he reclassifies, he will end up, I think, at Texas Tech. I think Chris Beard, what he's building in the short term, he may want to just latch on to what they have, play with his brother, and have the chance to be obviously the go-to guy from day one. Duke is another option, but Duke just has such a loaded recruiting class right now. I don't see him really jumping onto that. And then Kentucky's another one. I think if he doesn't reclassify, I think he ends up at UK. I think Calipari, what makes you think that? Yeah, I think the rationale behind that is that similar to what I said about Greg Brown, like Kentucky has such a loaded front court, and it may not matter. Similar to Greg Brown,
right.
Kuminga is much better than all these guys.
Right, exactly.
So it may not matter, but I also look at not only because Greg Brown's big, it's less of an issue, but Kuminga is going to be playing with Terrence Clark and Devin Askew and some of the guards they have committed, also some of the guys they may have coming back. I don't know if that friction is what is best for Jonathan Kuminga versus Greg Brown. I think it may not matter. So I think if he sticks in the 21 class, he will be a Kentucky Wildcat. If he does not if he reclassifies, I think he may go overseas, but I'm assuming he goes to college, and I think he ends up at Texas Tech. Watch out for LSU. Watch out for Nebraska as well. Another interesting school to look out for.
What's with Nebraska? What's his interest there?
Like I said, he's a very quiet kid. He wouldn't even tell you. So, I don't know. But Fred Hoiberg's trying.
Yeah.
Fred Hoiberg's trying to get
an NBA connection there. He's a guy who played in the NBA, coached in the NBA. He's coached Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Wade.
And look what Fred Hoiberg did at Iowa State. So,
in
terms of he's gotten guys that really shouldn't want to play names Iowa to go to Iowa State. So
yeah,
I could see something similar there, but I think Texas Tech with the brother connection is the place.
Yeah, Kuminga I think is obviously he's number one guy, so he's the most interesting amongst the guys on the list.
Yeah,
particularly because of the fact that he is a year behind. But I agree. I think that he's probably the toughest guy to read.
Right.
I actually would like to see him at Texas Tech because I do feel like we sometimes have these conversations about these guys want to go to these kind of not unnamed schools, but these secondary schools, not the traditional blue bloods, and then a lot of times they can't carry the weight of.
But a lot of times they're going to schools that don't have elite coaches.
Right. That's why I like Texas Tech. Cause I feel like Texas Tech's that perfect middle ground where no, he's not going to UK or some like stacked team, but he is going to a team that's really well coached that he can come in right away and contribute. And I think that he's going to end up probably learning a lot more, and I think being more ready for the NBA, going through the ringer of trying to carry a team like Texas Tech than he would if he just joined a stacked Kentucky team or he joined a stacked Duke team.
Or went to one of the worst teams in the country, like Nebraska.
Yeah. And I wouldn't count out Duke, though. I just feel like, Coach K, whenever you count out Coach K is when he strikes. Yeah. And he strikes in a big way.
So it was Zion.
Yes. And we look at reclassification cases. I mean, Coach K has been, I would argue, maybe the number one guy with reclassification. I know it might not make sense with
Barrett,
where the recruiting is right now, but he might not care. Yeah. We've seen him again stack a team that had Zion, Cam Reddish, and Zion and RJ Barrett and didn't care about positions and who were there. They just tried to make it work. And if there was anyone,
there will be transfers if Jonathan Kuminga ends up at Duke.
Yeah, I would. I probably, but I think that if anyone's going to make the case to reclassify, the best case at least to reclassify for Kuminga, Coach K has proven that he's been that guy. So I wouldn't count him out as well. But I think that's a good place to wrap this video. So where do you think these guys are going? Make sure you leave a comment of where you think these guys should go, where you think they will go. Of course, like this video, and of course, subscribe to our channel, New Generation Media, and make sure you check out our podcast, New Generation Sports Talk, on the New Generation Podcast Network. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn. That's Kendall. I'm EJ. Take it easy, guys. Peace.